Good day, viewers. My name is Ashley Smith. I'm the news editor of the Namibian, and as part of our new series on how we actually put stories together, we are focusing today on the anniversary of the Fishrot bribery scandal. Good day, viewers, and welcome. I'm Ashley Smith, the news editor of the Namibian, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues who were in the thick of things as the Fishrot scandal broke this time last year in Namibia. I'm joined by the editor of the Namibian, Tangeni Amupadhi, and of course the head of the investigation unit at the newspaper, Shinovene Immanuel. How are you today, gentlemen?
Very well, thank you. How are you, Ashley?
I'm very good. Quite a major roller coaster ride over the last year we've seen in terms of the Fishrot scandal, and of course the subsequent follow-up stories, and the issue is still burning very brightly on the media landscape.
Indeed.
Yeah. So looking back, I just want to take you back, Shinovene, right now to last year, just a week before we all started to feast on this investigative story that everybody is still talking about. Can you tell me about some of the key anecdotes that came with the reporting process at that time, as you started to unpack your story before it was published?
Yeah, I think one of the key details or key process that we tried to do was, I think, to avoid confusing the readers, because there was just so much information. That was number one. But it all started, I think, I was in the newsroom around, I think it was 3 o'clock, 2 o'clock. Then Tangeni called me, saying, look, there's this story that we should still, put more effort into, especially a week before we publish. So we then said he got a call from the editor of WikiLeaks, and that we should be part of this project. So, because we had more of a background before, we have covered the story. If you look at how that story unfolded, was that like a month or two prior, we had a story about an Angolan deal being hijacked by certain politicians. So we had a bit of background on the story already. So just few days, we in Tangeni and I, it was in fact probably top secret by then. It was because of the sensitivity of it. It was just 2 people or 3 that knew about the story and the details of it. So I think on a Friday, on a Saturday, we even had to decide that there is no going elsewhere. We have to be at one place. We had to make sure that we send out information to only a few people who will know and stuff like that. So just probably Tangeni might remember some of those details in the run-in.
So as the editor, how are you managing that process? We're talking about mountains of information here. We're talking about some files that ended up being called the Fishrot files from WikiLeaks. So as an editor, how did you manage the process of actually sifting through those files and making sure that the first story that hit had what was necessary to actually have that solid impact?
If I may take a bit of a step back, we were actually reminded by the ACC. Okay, this was after the Fishrot scandal had broken now, because the ACC sent out a press statement saying this story, the Namibian has written about it since 2014, if I remember correctly. So that was a reminder how long we actually have been on that fish core corruption scandal. Yeah. Already with their appointments and some issues going on, 2012, we were doing what would probably have been seen as either run-of-the-mill expose, or it would by our opponents who have just kind of painted us as being jealous of how some people were making it in the fishing industry. So a couple of months then before together with WikiLeaks and the Icelandic news organizations, we went with that story. We were in touch with Al Jazeera, we were in touch with Johannes, if I'm not mistaken. We had some key sources, at least one really key powerful source who, until shortly before the scandal, was still on the side of the sharks, as they were called.
Oh, yes.
So we were trying to work these sources to say, include us in this coverage. You might not see it, but we have been working on this story for years. And we worked behind the scenes to be part of that. And eventually, a week before, then WikiLeaks and Johannes and other sources opened up to us and said, okay, you want to get involved? Here we are about to go within a week. Yeah. And in fact, I think they asked us, will you manage? And we said, okay, give us whatever material you have. I'm sure some of them we already have, but give us the material. We are sure we could work something out that a lot of it we didn't maybe have before. So it was a trough of information, to come to your question, to wade through. Yes. Thankfully, we really have a diligent person in Shino who can focus. Yeah. And he went through that, and then he was just sending me bits and pieces. Eventually, I said to him, okay, compile a piece around this stuff. And then that's how we got to compile that. On what day was the release? Because I think we worked flat out over that weekend, just going through the material, picking what to go with. In fact, I think until today, if you go back to that trough, there will be fresh material still to work on that you hardly would need much to do, maybe just analysis. If accountants were to go in there, they will find still fresh material, lawyers, anything. So there was plenty, but because we were on that story for a good 6 years, maybe 4 years, 4 to 6 years, it felt easier to work with it, to work with the material.
And of course, over those years that you're talking about, you actually did pen a lot of editorials around trying to put together the picture of what was actually happening in the fishing industry.
What we couldn't report, we could comment on. Absolutely.
So when the picture became clear to you as the editor, what was your kind of first reaction to the scale of the scandal?
That's actually, you used the right term. We did not know how badly this was. Shino, you would remember one of our contacts said, guess how much money does James have? I hope I can put this on the record. And then we went, 300 million. Nah. 500 million. Nah. Until we just gave up.
Gave up, yeah.
And the person said, $1 billion is not an understatement. In cash.
In cash.
In cash.
And this is one of the shocks, allegedly.
Allegedly.
Yeah.
But now we know there is over $1 billion Namibian dollars in one account in Kazakhstan.
That's correct.
So it made sense. There was a lot going on, and there's no way I would be lying if I were to say, oh, I knew the magnitude of this. What we knew is there were shenanigans going on.
Shino, just getting back to you, just in terms of, obviously the story is blowing up massively. Just in this year alone, what has been kind of some of the highlights of the coverage that you've picked up?
Because of the magnitude, the number of, the data that was available, we tried to take it one story at a time, and that we have to do it very, very well, because
They say
people
you
will-
eat the elephant piece by piece.
Yeah, exactly. So otherwise, people will be, so tired already about the Fishrot issue. So what we try to do is cover one of the first thing. Often people ask, but how many properties, residential events that this person has, and where? Those kind of questions. So we try to say, okay, first thing first, let's go and dig up what is officially, at least formally known in the documents or at the deeds office. How many houses that Saki has, or how many houses that James has, or Maggie Punya. So formally we got that information, but funny enough, we were working on it, so we wanted to really be diligent on it, but just when we were about to publish a story, I think it was Mike, when they were applying for bail, it was Fiti, when he was applying for bail, he had to put out to say, actually I own this number of properties.
Yeah.
So, but at that time already we had 100% of all, at least 90% of what he said in court. But we could not now just rush it. We still say, look, the story is still there, the focus on the story. So we had stories on what they own, what was found at their houses, who are they, by the way, who are these? Because often people will assume that you know who Mikey Punya was, but a lot of people they didn't even follow those stories. So the main story is also to follow the money. We try to do a lot of pieces on tracking where the money went. It went, for instance, from the law firms. That is a story that I think maybe if we can talk, we'll talk about it later on how we covered one of the Caesar story. He was highly involved in it. I think at some point we pulled back the story. He said it's not ready yet, because, and then as a reporter, you often feel, but the story is so ready, why not?
Yeah.
And then he said, no, don't worry, let's just hold on to it. And then I think it even came out even much more better with a focus. And then, so we have the following of the money part, which is so crucial in a story like this. I think we're still probably even halfway tracking who got what. So we followed investment firms, individuals, politicians, but that with the help of a team. We didn't do it on our own. We had a Jim, for instance, who is in the background, who is, in terms of getting details right, every word should be backed up with evidence kind of reporting. So that's so far.
So Tangeni, tell us a little bit why you pulled the Sisa story in the beginning, the Sisa Manji story.
As Shino was pointing out, it had the key elements, but the links, the correct links, were a little bit sketchy. Did we eventually write about the First Lady part there?
Yeah, that came later.
Yeah, because there were just some bits and pieces that we couldn't connect the dots properly. And therefore I just thought, okay, look, yes, this story could be done, but without specific details showing what is what. For instance, we would say, okay, money came from Fishcore, went into Namanje account, and then paid for, or then passed on to Arma Zankuyu, the Swapo politician, and his friend Vaino Mipondoka, the businessman.
Yes.
So we had to be sure, did money go from Fishcore really to them?
Yeah.
And if it's a loan, why then pay that money through the lawyer's
The
account?
lawyer's account, yes.
So those were some of the questions that we were trying to get answers to.
So what we're trying to say, I think what you're also trying to say is that in the middle of this breaking scandal, this saga, journalistic principles needed to also be adhered to.
That is crucial. For instance, we have picked up over those years many bits of bits and pieces of rumors of money going to certain people until we got the data
Yes.
confirmed and checked. We wouldn't go with that because otherwise we would be reckless. And we have learned over the years it's easy to misread a document and think that
Yes.
this is the gun, the smoking gun.
Yeah.
You end up actually
Shooting yourself in the foot.
shooting yourself in the foot.
Mm.
And very often, people we write about, we've come to learn that they will pick on a non-essential error
Yes.
to discredit an entire story. So journalistic principles are paramount.
Yeah.
Just an addition on the CISA story. I think one of the things, because the draft I think said something in the line of there was money paid to CISA's account and so on and so on. But we had to find out, but how can we prove it? If now CISA comes to us tomorrow, guys, you are saying I got money, can you prove it? So we had to ask our connects, and then they had to say, okay, this is the bank statement. And even on that bank statement, you have to look, okay, it says 15 million going to CISA's account, but is that being paid or is it coming the other way? Because it could easily say, no, it's actually, actually that money is not even coming to me, so you got even that first wrong. So we had to engage and I think 2 or so lawyers to just interpret that for us. So we took a bit of a process. I think it's a classic case of us really just saying it's not worth going out first if you're going to get it wrong.
You're going to get it wrong.
Yeah,
Yeah.
because that is damaging and it's not even worth it.
So Tangeni, in terms of, it's a year later. Do you think the lawmakers are moving fast enough in terms of reforms to actually stop another Fishrot from happening in Namibia?
I think everybody knows the answer by now. They have done zero
Yes.
to stop another Fishrot. And I mean, quotas were issued in December or January.
January,
Yeah.
they issued
Yeah.
some in January and
They made excuses about why the industry can't be put on hold.
Oh, yeah.
So we have to do that. In September, they issued more quotas.
Quotas, yeah.
Not a single policy or law was changed. All what we hear from the current minister, Kawana, who seems to be the government's cleanup guy when it comes to some of this, is word of mouth explanation that I used UNAM or he used UNAM
Yes, I remember.
to help
Yeah.
them vet, but it's still exactly the same process. The quotas have gone exactly to the same people. In fact, if the people who are accused had fishing companies, they have continued to benefit directly. So unfortunately, that's the sad part. When you compare with how the laws were being changed, when the Minister of Fisheries then, Bernard Esau, lost in court with Bidvest or Namzov,
Thumbs up, yes. That's right. Yeah.
they went to Parliament and in record time gave the minister more and entrenched his powers to decide however ways he wanted to dish out the fishing quotas.
Ironically, that document was signed on September 11th, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah?
Another weapon of mass destruction. Yeah.
Definitely a
Yeah.
weapon of mass destruction for the Namibian public.
Yeah.
It was,
Yeah.
yeah.
So just, and I think that for me is also, it hasn't gotten lost in the story, but the actual impact on Namibia, the pillaging of our fishing resources, the money that has been diverted away from the development of the country into the pockets of the few. did that play in your mind, Shino, when you were busy with the story, the grand scale of the theft and the thievery, almost economic terrorism that happened during the scandal?
Yeah, I think one of the, and I think you're right to say, to put it that way, to say, I think the focus is mostly on the persons,
Yeah.
people, but the resource. I think if you look back 100 years from now, Namibia was probably one of the best in terms of the fishing resource. But since pilchard is close to it has disappeared. In fact, it's almost extinct. We have horse mackerel now. Everyone is pouncing on it. It's just a matter of time before it finishes. But because that is the key issue, that the reforms that needed to be done, that immediately say no, but this can't go on, because 100 years from now, I doubt people will even know of a horse mackerel fish in Namibia's sea, because what is happening now is mostly just short-term gains of people who just want to quickly get money and then use that for their own, but not thinking of
Sustainably.
Yeah, sustainably.
About the
Not even
next
that.
generations that
Yeah.
will follow and need to
Yeah.
actually
Yeah.
build up the country using the natural resources.
Yeah, exactly. So that is really the unfortunate story that is probably not being told enough to the public, to say, look, this is your future that is being depleted. And I remember, I think Tangeni and I, we worked on a story about the pilchard issue. I think 2 years ago, we reported how SAO was just hell-bent on just getting the last fish in the ocean. And at least, cabinet came in to rescue, but it was just too late.
Yeah.
Because everything, even the scientists were saying, guys, you can't issue quotas anymore, because it's just not enough. So that's the risk that I think Namibians should look at in the longer picture. These guys, that's why we were saying at the moment it's mostly the same faces. They are, those who are in jail are there, but outside it's just a change of faces, and they continue to do the same. So it's more of the impact that this is having on the resource. I don't think
On your children, your great-grandchildren, your great-great-grandchildren.
And you can even see that before that, 100 years from now, it was not the current government, it was not the South African government, but even those who were before. And if you look at the graph, it's even shocking. It was like, now it's this level.
Yeah.
So hopefully people will wake up and say, and hold government to account, that say, you cannot continue to do it. So.
Just on the issue of, I also know, Tangeni, that when the auctioning of fishing quotas was announced, of the government developmental quota was announced, the Namibian was in support of that process. Can you tell us why you, as the editor, supported the auctioning of the fishing quotas, developmental fishing quota?
There is a misunderstanding of public bid auctioning is. There are people who use the patriotism tag to say, if you auction, it will go to the foreigners, they will just come in and buy it with all the money. Actually, what people don't realize perhaps is this auction process that we talk about is opening up. It's making the issue transparent to an extent that not one person, as it is currently, the minister decides whether they give the rights and quotas to Ashley or to Tangeni, or they just literally pick randomly. Now what happens there is a very little goes straight into the government coffers.
Yeah.
Into the budget, national budget. So then the quotas get auctioned by individuals. Tangeni, who got fishing quotas
Of course.
from the government.
So the middlemen are now playing and,
Yes.
and earning the money that government could have.
Exactly.
Yes.
People make it seem as if auction doesn't take place once B is given for BE and whatever empowerment schemes they talk about. No, in fact, it just takes the money away from building schools and gives it to individuals. That's why you find some people donated money to to fund the state's eye clinic, the eye program. They would fund regions. I mean, Namsov was good at it. They created a governor's fund.
Yeah.
It's because the government had forgone the income that they could have gotten, the rental income.
Yes.
That is why you find people declaring dividends before the fish is even caught.
Caught.
I mean, how do you declare dividends before the product that you are making money from is even made? So that is why we support a public auction, public bids, so that at least there is some level of openness, some level of transparency, some restraint on individuals who have connections and individuals who have the power to decide. Because we hear how many people applied or how many companies? 5,000.
It's about 5,000 applications.
5,000 applications. Let's assume it's 200,000 Namibians in those 5,000 applications. It's still less than 10% of the population being blessed by individual ministers.
Yeah.
Why should it be? At the expense of money going into the state coffers. It's a pity they really messed it up, this auction process. But already you can see that the money from just less than 10% of all the quotas, the auction there, just if they had auctioned it for what the other guys are selling it for, like 1,500, 1,000 per metric ton for horse mackerel, you would still have made more money. You can go and look in the budget. The government would still have made more money from less than 10% compared to all these years that we have been collecting what they call fishing levies and licenses.
You know, just a quick one to you before we kind of end off with the last two questions. It was the same question for both of you that I'm going to ask. But how do we as the media keep this issue on the boil? How do we keep people interested in listening and seeing and reading about the Fishrot scandal?
Yeah, I think we should, the first thing I think we should keep on doing is to tell this story in various platforms. It's very important that a villager who doesn't know about the story would hear about the story on radio, or a youngster who doesn't have enough time to go through 1,500 word story to just get it immediately in 2 minutes on video, or for a person who really has time and wants to pay all attention to get to a website or to buy a newspaper and really read that content, because I think frankly it's probably one of the best stories in my lifetime, I think, in terms of the details and the implications of it. And ideally, I think if we have more follow-ups and not just one media house, I think at the moment a lot of media houses are working on it. It's a pity, if we had 2 or 3 more that could even compete and say who is having the best Fishrot story of the month or so, where you'll be like, if you're not fast on this one, you're going to lose out. So that kind of competition, it's not strong, but at the moment we produce content on it. So it's more of a continuation. I think it's a story that will be with us for the next 5 or 10 years, that you keep going, but for us is to then keep making the person being interested. And how do you make that is to probably find new angles and find new ways of telling a story through, like we are trying to have profiles, we have other stories from court documents, and I think as it unfolds, for all I know, it's probably going to be blockbuster stuff from the court. So I think we should, even when it's in the courts, we should even find a way to make sure that it's how do we put it? It's a sexy story to tell, even from the courts. I think people will be much more interested.
This is the kind of story that we do not need to go to any length to sensationalize it. The facts themselves are so sensational. It's unbelievable stuff. What is happening that we still have $1 billion in Kazakhstan?
Yeah.
Doesn't the government want
Wants
this
the
money?
Yes. Yeah.
What is happening that Fishcore has paid so much money for no good reasons and no one has still yet been sued? Like what we are seeing at the SME bank, for instance. At least the liquidators have started going after some people to make sure that they pay back that money. So you might not be able to prove criminality in some cases, but surely you can show that there was negligence, you can show that there was mismanagement, abuse, and I think the innovative telling of the stories is what we should do. We should encourage plays to be written about it. We should have audiovisual documentaries being told on it. We should write books. We should do cartoons, like video cartoons, television cartoons, to help tell the story. So I think if, as Shino says, the more people get onto this story, the better we make ourselves understand what is this issue really about. It's less about the people who have been arrested. Believe you me, this plundering has been going on since during apartheid, maybe even before. Because I remember as a young activist reading some books by the UN on the plundering of the Namibian fishing resources by Russians, by South Africans, by Spanish, by the Cubans. I mean, nobody is accusing them of criminality, but just that over-exploitation. And that's why we don't have pilchards. There were times when we used to have sardines and pilchards and whatever in pegs. Namibian branded, Southwest Africa branded. And now you don't find that, and it's because of the plunder of the resources. So telling the story in different ways maybe would help our audience, but the public also understand why it is important to choose the right leaders and to put pressure on the leaders to make the changes that need to be made.
You actually stole my last question out of my mouth, because I was actually going to link it up to what do we do as society, what do we do as civil society, the media, to actually begin to put pressure on government to make those changes, to bring those reforms that can actually stop the nation from going through another Fishrot.
That's why we are in journalism. Knowledge or information, let me put it this way, information is in my view at least, the most important currency a human being can ever have. I mean, a baby that's just get born, the moment they don't know where the mother's breast is, already that baby is at a disadvantage. But if this baby can sniff around and see the breast, suddenly that knowledge already is what you feed on. Unfortunately, maybe we have not done enough, or the public have not opened up enough to appreciate that news media are probably among the earlier stages of providing information, and therefore that can be distilled into knowledge for the public. I mean, these guys who are getting rich for no good reason, It's not because they have extraordinary powers to sniff that there is a beautiful, a lucrative government tender going, or fishing contract, or diamond license, or a piece of land. The farms are being dished out as well, just in a similar way. It's basic access to information, basic knowledge, and that's where us as media come in with helping the public to appreciate that connection.
Well, thank you, viewers, for joining us on that note. We want to say goodbye, and thank you, Shino. Thank
Thanks
you,
for having
Tangeni.
Thank you.
Very interesting, and I hope we can do this very soon in the future again.
Absolutely.
Thank you.